I have plenty of time to do the interview now. You have time. So, the interview is broken up into three parts. Each part has about three questions in it, just so it flows nicely and it's easier to talk about the topics in which I would like to talk to you about. You do have time for this? Okay. All right. So, yes, I can hear you just fine. So the main parts I would like to talk about are abortions undergone on minors by not using judicial bypass procedures and counseling regarding proper information in women's health. Okay, so part one is just so I can get to know you and what you're talking about with Planned Parenthood. So here we go. Question one: when did you start your career in Planned Parenthood?
I started my first my first position at Planned Parenthood in 2004, and I started teaching sex education in schools at that time. So I would go to schools, community-based organizations, and other places to provide information on how to make informed decisions about sexual health. And that was definitely something that was very appealing to me. As I understood the consequences of high rates of sexually transmitted infections and high rates of unintended pregnancy.
That's great. What is the most tragic event you've witnessed in your lifetime?
The most tragic event?
Yes, sir.
Interesting. Well, professionally, I would say that one of the most tragic events happening in the area of reproductive rights is when we saw here in Ohio the legislature passing a law that will prohibit Planned Parenthood from receiving or from applying to grants to provide sex education. So basically, we're effectively in 2016, the governor signed a bill that will ban Planned Parenthood from even applying or competing for funds to provide sex education to youth in the juvenile justice system, to youth in the foster care system, to provide HIV testing, and to provide infant mortality prevention programming in the state of Ohio. So to me, that has been one of the most tragic and unfortunate events in reproductive health in Ohio.
I see. The last question is, if you were to die right now, what do you hope would be your legacy?
I will say putting Planned Parenthood's education and outreach program in Ohio at a national level. Here in Ohio, I can tell you that our program reaches 17% of adolescents in Ohio. So we serve 17 of all adolescents in Ohio at Planned Parenthood. I don't think any other program can say that, or any other place in Ohio can say that they serve that many adolescents. So we provide, we are among all Planned Parenthoods in the country, we have the third biggest capacity to serve youth.
I see. Thank you for those answers. The second part is scenarios. I'm going to read a list of scenarios that have been posed by actual events happening in Planned Parenthood history. And my request is that you answer honestly what your reaction/response would be. So scenario 1 is a minor. She had sex and mutual choice with her partner. She goes into a clinic and requests counseling, shares that she's pregnant and wants an abortion, but does not want to tell her parents about the father. Despite, what would you do about that?
Well, our staff who works at our surgical sites are highly trained doctors, nurses, and other healthcare professionals that will be familiar with that situation, and they would immediately assess the situation. If the minor what are this minor's options? They will explain to her what are her options, and they will also assess the situation in terms of figuring out if this is something that she's designing for herself, or she's being coerced, or if there are other issues at hand. So these are, again, we have professionals working at our surgical sites that would immediately create a assessment.
So by options, what do you think they would suggest to the minor?
What
would they suggest to the minor? Some options that you mentioned.
Well, we don't suggest anything. We provide information about the options, and it all depends on each different scenario or in each different case. Not all people that come to us, or not all people that come to a healthcare provider, have the same situation, right? So it completely depends on how the conversation goes and what our professional staff looks at in that scenario. But as a general information sharing session, it will provide the minor with her options, which are she could actually continue the pregnancy and decide if she wants to. She can decide to parent, or she can continue the pregnancy and decide to adopt, and we'll make a referral for that. Or she could decide to terminate, and then we'll get into the information on that.
In order to get a abortion as a minor in the state of Ohio, you have to go through judicial bypass. Have you experienced or heard of any cases in Ohio recently where judicial bypass has not been used and they have provided a minor an abortion without just use of judicial bypass?
So first of all, a minor can have an abortion with the parent's consent. So in that scenario, she does not need a judicial bypass.
Correct. I mean without parental consent.
Yeah. Okay. No, I have not heard of any situation where a child or an adolescent who has had an abortion without a judicial bypass. That's against the law. And that I've never heard of it.
Okay. The second scenario, sorry about I don't have my lack of a better term, but this has been a scenario that has been reported on frequently, not in different cases, but reported on one specific case where a pimp comes in with a teen girl and requests STD testing. If you were to experience this firsthand, what would you do?
I'm sorry. Who comes in with a teen girl?
A pimp.
A parent?
Pimp. P-I-M-P. Manager of the sex industry.
Yes. Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay. And if he is the one requesting the STIs, not the girl? Is that the question?
Correct.
Well, again, our staff is, like any other healthcare provider, is trained to identify situations in which the client or the patient is being coerced into doing something that they do not want to do. So in that scenario, again, because of our healthcare providers, our medical professionals training, they will immediately assess if this is a situation where they will need to separate the client from the accompanying adult. And immediately when that happens, they will have a conversation with the client, with the patient, and assess the situation. If there is a law being broken here, or if there is situations, again, like coercion, which is against the law, we comply with local, state, and federal law, and we will proceed accordingly to that.
I see. How would you react to someone that, in the midst of blatant illegal activity, did not respond according to local and state level and federal laws regarding to that specific illegal activity?
We have very, very strict code of conduct, and obviously we do not tolerate any activities from that. So we know we have zero tolerance.
I see, but what would your reaction be if that had happened? Which I'm sure you've heard of the live action reports that have been posted and have had undercover agents go into Planned Parenthood and record these instances. What is your reaction to that?
Well, what I can tell you is, especially specifically with those recordings, as soon as we saw that, I can tell you, we were deeply disturbed and immediately launched an investigation. Again, we are required by law to protect or to report abuse, and we take that responsibility very seriously. Those employees who were in those tapes were wrong. Those who break the law were fired, no exceptions, no excuses. And we continue to currently also have to understand our procedures and our role in protecting teens. So that's our action, and that speaks to how we will react again.
Thank you. The third and final scenario for part two is going to relate to a woman comes to a state that legalizes abortions at the last moment lawfully acceptable. Let's just use Ohio for an example, since the new legislation does not allow for abortions to be done past 24 weeks, correct?
Yeah, I will have to confirm that. I'm sorry. A second. You say medical abortion or surgical abortion?
Medical.
Sorry, I will have to check on that. I'm not at the surgical side. I haven't worked at the surgical side, so I will have to double check that. I can't find that.
That's fine. Let's just continue through this scenario.
Let me double check that.
Okay.
You know what? Let's continue on searching for this.
Okay. So the final scenario, there's one more part after this. a woman comes to a state. We decided we're going to be doing Ohio, and wants an abortion at the very, let's say just at 24 weeks, because abortion's over 24 weeks, as I've heard. Legislation prohibits abortion's gone beyond that. She inquires, has there been any injuries to the woman having an abortion in the past? Has there been any injuries to the women from a late term abortion? What would you say in reaction to that, especially in light of the Keisha Marie Atkins tragedy?
So let me see if I understand the question. You're saying if a woman comes to have an abortion, but she has a history of injuries, is that what you're saying, from a previous abortion?
No.
Is that the question?
She's inquiring, has there been any injuries to other women having a late-term abortion, and she's wondering, has there been any injuries in that case?
Okay, so she comes to an abortion provider. She says, I would like to know how to prevent injuries to other women.
She's inquiring about having a late-term abortion and is wondering, has there been injuries to other women during a late-term abortion? And I said, how would you react to that, especially in light of the Keisha Marie Atkins tragedy?
Got it. Okay, now I get the question. All right, so she's requiring a late-term abortion. So and she is trying to get information, what is the history or how safe that procedure is. So how would we react to that? So obviously we'll provide information to her on, first of all, what services we provide, and up to what gestational age we can provide an abortion. And we can then inform her of the medical. We can provide her the medical information about the risks of each procedure that we can provide.
I see. I'm trying to find the doctor that proctored that abortion. I'm having a hard time to locate that in this time. But in a certain case, a woman did die from a late-term abortion, and a woman was requesting information about the risks of having a late-term abortion. And the doctor in which she was confiding in clearly told her that there had been no accidents, no deaths, no injuries from an abortion in a late term, and that was a year after the Keisha Marie Atkins tragedy. What would you say to that doctor if you were talking to him?
Well, I really can't speak for any other doctor. Was that doctor a Planned Parenthood doctor?
What? Can you repeat that?
I was asking, was that the doctor that you're referring to? The one that you said provided information to a patient that she was not, that there were no risks? Was that a Planned Parenthood doctor? That's my question.
Yes, sir.
Well, I will have to figure out, first of all, find out where that doctor was working to tell you that, to follow up with you on that question, because I don't know. I'm not familiar with that. Planned Parenthood doctor saying that.
I'm currently pulling up the names of those doctors. They're one of the four. He's one of the four doctors who performs and encourages late-term abortions during the third trimester.
And you said he's a Planned Parenthood doctor?
Yes, sir. My question is, what would you say to that doctor in response to the information that was falsely spread to that woman?
Well, unfortunately, I can't confirm that that's a doctor at Planned Parenthood who would say that information. So in order for me to tell you what I could say to the doctor, I need to figure out if that happened. And if you give me the name of the doctor, I can figure this out. So because you're giving me a hypothetical, you're saying, if a doctor say this, what would you say? And I can't respond to that because I don't know if that happened or not.
I see.
You're saying you did. So if you could provide me the name of the Planned Parenthood doctor, I will be able to provide you with more answers.
I would have to forget that name. I should have had it pulled up, and I forgot to pull that up. My apologies. Let's continue on to the third and final part of this. So the last three questions. The first is, what is the normal protocol for the situations previously discussed?
What is the normal protocol for which situation?
The teen and the pimp, secretive minor, and the misled mother.
Okay, I think I already explained our policies on providing accurate information to people, accurate medical information to people, and how we comply with all local, state, and federal law.
Okay. Second question, if you're randomly promoted to the CEO position of Planned Parenthood, what is the top 3 things you would change?
The top 3 things I would change. I will say I would trying to see if there are things that I would change, or rather, if there were things that I will increase. I think it would be more of. I think I will try to be in more schools and providing or community-based organizations providing information to people to take to make informed decisions about their health would be that would be one. I would say I will have more conversations with people who do not agree with Planned Parenthood, and to have that sit down and across many communities, and just to converse about what we truly do at Planned Parenthood. And the third one would be always focus on serving more people who need our services.
I see. I thank you for that answer. You mentioned in the things that you would change that you would sit down and converse with people who do not agree with Planned Parenthood. What is the arguments that you hear of why Planned Parenthood is not just or fair or humane? What are the arguments you often hear, and how do you combat that?
I do not hear. I have never heard. At least I personally have never heard someone saying that Planned Parenthood is not humane or just. What I have heard is of people saying that, of people having misconceptions of what Planned Parenthood does, and that's what I will have the opportunity or use the opportunity to sit down with people who do not have all the information about what Planned Parenthood does. Sit down with them and then provide them that information. But I have never, again, personally, myself, I never encountered anyone to say to me that Planned Parenthood is inhumane.
Can you state some of those misconceptions that you just stated that people may have? Can you expand on that?
Yeah, I could tell you that I would love the opportunity to talk to anyone who has a misconception about Planned Parenthood, that 1 in 5 women have turned to Planned Parenthood at some time in their lives for professional, non-judgmental, and confidential care. That we have earned this confidence because we've been providing services for over 100 years. It's a nonprofit organization. And for instance, here in Ohio, we serve about 65,000 patients with life-saving cancer screenings, birth control, prevention and treatment of STIs, breast health services, pap smears, and about 40,000 people with sexual health education that through our website to email every month. And we are in community-based meditations in schools, providing youth with the comprehensive sex education programs based on medically accurate information that includes abstinence as a 100% way to prevent unintended pregnancies and STIs, and that education is actually also one of the reasons why, or one of the ways in which we can reduce all these unintended consequences.
I see. This is just a couple of random questions that I'm pulling off the top of my head. Some things I've been researching lately. I did have a chance to briefly speak to Abby Johnson about a year ago.
What is your reaction to Abby Johnson's resignation from her high-ranking job to start leading one of the biggest pro-life organizations in the world?
I really can't, I think I guess everyone has the ability to, or has the right to choose whatever they want to be, and that's much.
Okay, the last thing I want to talk to you about is Planned Parenthood clinic ratings in Greater Ohio. I have about 5 ratings here that I printed out in some quotes from Google. I've Googled these clinics and some things that people are saying about them. Would you be interested in hearing them?
Yes, you can read this.
Okay, I'm going to start by saying that the ratings in Greater Ohio do not exceed 3 stars. What is your reaction to that?
I can tell you that we, first of all, I will have to look at the ratings. I will be more than happy if you can send me those ratings. Because I don't have them in front of me, so I don't know where they're coming from. But I can tell you this, that we always are working tirelessly every single day we come to work to provide the services that patients come to us to get with the highest quality, and that we, at the same time, we're always working on having a high patient satisfaction to anyone who comes to our health centers.
Thank you for that.
I'll be more than happy to. If you tell me exactly where those ratings are, I'll be more than happy to look at this.
Okay, let's start on that note. Thank you for that sentiment. We're going to start in, let's say, Cleveland. The rating there is 3.2 on Google. The Cleveland Clinic.
Mm-hmm.
The Cleveland Planned Parenthood Clinic.
Okay.
So I've acquired 2 quotes from Cleveland, and the first quote being, "From the minute I walked in, I was treated like a number. Horrible. Totally dehumanized me. I do not know what's wrong with the people who work here. Never go here." What is your reaction to that quote?
I will tell you that we the same thing as I said before. Anytime we hear someone not receiving the quality of care that we are used to provide for this past 100 years, we immediately want to make sure that we hear from them and we take the appropriate measures to improve ourselves in providing care.
All right, the second question is relating to medicine. This particular reviewer was describing earlier in her quote that she was going to get a certain birth control, and the doctor told her it'd be $24, and it ended up being $60. I'm going to read you this quote. It's an excerpt. "The doctor told me it would be $24, so now I'm not only pissed because they have not called me to tell me they had a problem with it, but now I have to pay an extra $60 when I don't even have enough to pay my bills. Thanks a lot." Again, this is off of Google reviews, public ratings, public reviews. Anybody can search it. What is your reaction to that?
I will say that we will encourage any patient with a tourist in that situation to call us back immediately, and we will work with the patient. We use a sliding scale fee that is based on the patient's financial needs, and if this person is in a situation, we encourage them to call us back immediately.
Thank you. On that note, how do you keep clinics accountable?
Let me just make a pause there. How many? You originally said there were 3 segments with 3 questions each segment. So I'm just trying, for the interest of time, I'm just trying to figure out how many more questions.
I did have 3 parts to the interview section. I just wanted to, one of the things I did call Megan Ross and Erica Butler about was talking about Planned Parenthood ratings. I would say maximum 10 minutes of it. Do you have time for that?
I have time. 7 more minutes because I have to go at 11:40.
How do you hold Planned Parenthood clinics available? Not you specifically, but how does Planned Parenthood as an organization hold their clinics accountable for upholding the rules and the regulations in the federal, the state, and the local government's laws?
We have an infrastructure in place that allows to monitor those things. We have, again, internal people that are always monitoring situations. So we have risk and quality assurance people. In addition to that, we are audited by surprise visits from the Ohio Department of Health. We are audited by the federal government on surprise visits. We also go through an accreditation process. So through all this means, especially at the state level, the Ohio Department of Health continuously comes to audit our services, and time after time we have passed those audits.
Okay, I appreciate that. That is, I'm sure, for many Americans and many women who receive your services, comforting to them, knowing that your organization and your clinics are being audited and held responsible for things they may be doing. The last quote I'm going to read to you is from Rocky River. The rating is the highest rating at 3.9, but it has the lowest reviews. That's an interesting development there. This woman says that if you want to see a doctor about issues or side effects you may be having from your birth control, I do not recommend this Planned Parenthood. Twice now, by the same doctor, I felt very rushed and very unconcerned for. The nurses are always pleasant, and I've always strongly supported Planned Parenthood, since it's been my only source of health care when I first got birth control in my teens. But I'm so disappointed in my recent visits. I'm now in search for a local gynecologist that accepts my insurance, but I'll have to explain my whole history in hopes of finding actual answers. I've always appreciated the sliding pay scale they use, but I guess it's worth paying more to feel cared about and to resolve pain. You have repeated frequently throughout this interview that you work tirelessly and you want to resolve any conflict that patients may be having. Does Planned Parenthood specifically reach out to patients if they have a bad review? Do you look for those reviews and contact people that are having conflict?
Well, I can tell you what I can tell you is that, again, you're speaking to reviews that I'm not aware of. I haven't read them. I trust you say they're public. I haven't read them or seen them. But I know that our risk and quality department conducts internal surveys for all of our patients, and that that satisfaction it's analyzed and it's looked into. And if there is low satisfaction, we immediately take hands-on to solve that. patient complaints, we immediately take action as well. So I will say I would be delighted to see if the people that you're reading about would love for them to call us, because we do this. We listen seriously to any dissatisfaction issues, and we work with patients on that. Again, you read who the patient is or the source of that. I can tell you that our risk and quality department is always working with them.
Thank you. I appreciate your time today and everything and all the information you've been able to provide me with. Is there any closing comments, as any and everything you say will be used in the presentation?
Yeah, actually, not comments. I just want to make sure we do this also from our end. I want to have a few questions for you, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
All right. So you said your name is Mercedes Thomas, right?
Yes, sir.
And what school do you go to?
I go to Ohio Online Virtual Academy.
Is this is this interview a part of a class requirement?
Yes, sir. This is for my honors English class. It's a project called Genius Hour.
Can you give me the name of your teacher?
Shayna Van Bergen.
You spell her last name?
I would have to look at it. One moment, please.
Thank you.
All right, her last name is as follows: B A N as in no, G R I M B E R G E N.
Okay. And the last question: do you have a contact info for her?
Yes, I do. It's going. You want her email?
Email or phone number, whichever you have.
Okay, I have her email. So that's going to be S and then her last name at ohva.org.
Okay. At
ohva.org.
Perfect. We give a record of all the interviews that we do, and then at the end of the year, we just provide a report to our community of how many people we help with interviews. That's the reason why.
Okay, I see. Thank you for the information you provided me with.
Well, thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too.